Hey there, I'm so excited you're joining me in today's video. I cannot wait to chat with you about 5 steps to starting a wedding and portrait photography business in 2024. So honestly, I just so grateful and just so humbled getting to make this video because I so clearly remember when I started my photography business and just wishing I had some kind of blueprint, some kind of plan, and just to get to sit here now and share that with you and just what I would have told myself back then as someone who wanted to just quit their job and go full time is just something I'm really, really grateful for. So let's go ahead and get started. Here is the very first thing that I would do if I wanted to start a wedding photography and portrait business in 2024. Okay, so the first thing I would advise you to do is to really invest time and resources into developing your craft and developing your skill set and style as much as possible. And this might sound really, really simple. Like, of course I should learn how to be a photographer. Of course I should learn how to use a camera. But I can't tell you just how important it is to actually know the ins and outs of your camera, how to shoot in manual, how to use flash. So I would really advise you to spend as much time as you can practicing, but also experimenting, just having fun with it. And I think that's how you really start to develop your unique style, which is something you're really going to need if you want to stand out in a very, very competitive and very saturated market. So something I personally did that honestly up till this day I still do is that I would spend time on very low pressure personal projects and personal work. So in the beginning, this looked like me just going outside with my camera and just practicing and learning how to shoot in manual, practicing different lighting scenarios, different settings. But as I got further and further in my business, I just spent more time really trying to hone in on my style. Because it's really easy to get on Instagram, to get on Facebook, TikTok, wherever, and just see a lot of different styles and want to mimic them or want to try to recreate them in some way. But I would encourage you really, really early on, if you can start looking for what inspires you, what are you drawn to, what colors, what lines, textures, different posing angles, what are you naturally drawn to, what inspires you, what makes you feel excited to create. So I would start really thinking about that, and this is of course going to evolve and change, but invest time in learning your craft, practice, practice, practice as much as you can, and invest resources if you can. Some really foundational courses about lighting, posing, composition. These are all things that are going to serve you for years to come and that you'd be able to learn as well as implement, which is really how you're going to learn how to develop your style and really improve your craft as much as you can. Okay, the second thing, again, might seem a little bit obvious, but would be to invest in equipment. So as you're learning photography, as you're practicing, as you're being educated, as you're investing in courses to learn technical skills, this is where I would advise you to start investing in gear. Now, we all know photography gear is expensive, this doesn't happen overnight, but as you're learning your style, as you're seeing what you're drawn to, you're going to know what you want to photograph. And if you already know that it's weddings and portraits, that's wonderful. But as you learn how different lenses produces different results and what you might be drawn to, that's when you're going to be investing in that specific equipment. So for me personally, I believe I initially started with a 50mm lens, which is wonderful to start with. I highly recommend it. And later on, as I learned more about what I was drawn to, what types of results I wanted to create with my images, I actually realized that I really liked the 35mm and I didn't love the 85mm as much. So that's just an example. So I do have those lenses, but I really rarely use my 85. I use it sometimes, but not as often as my 35. So just an example, but start investing in gear. When you're starting a business, there's definitely a little bit of a balance of what you should invest in, because I definitely think you need to know your craft, you need to educate yourself, you need to be developing your skill set, honing in on your craft, but you also have to have the gear, right? So just really trying to balance those two things. And again, this doesn't happen overnight. Take your time and really make good decisions as far as what you want to invest in. Okay, the third thing, now that you are learning about photography, you're developing your craft, you're investing in education, you've invested in equipment, would be to build your portfolio. So ideally, you want to, of course, be confident enough in your skills that when you start to build your portfolio, you feel good about the images that you're producing, the images that you're sharing, and you feel like they're representative of your work. And I don't think that can be done if you don't have the knowledge and the practice to be able to produce those images. So that's why I have this it's in order, but you're kind of doing all of these things somewhat simultaneously. So a great way to build your portfolio and simultaneously build relationships in your industry is having style shoots, having portfolio days, doing photography swaps. So maybe taking photos of vendors who might need behind the scenes content or branding content. These are just a couple examples of how you can start building your portfolio. So something about being in the beginning stages of a photography business is you're going to have to do some work for free. I am not saying that your art and your time is not valuable. Of course it is. But when you're in the really early stages of building your photography business, you may not have clients yet, you may not have a whole lot of work to showcase. And so this is an excellent time to just start serving people really, really well and just letting them know what it's like to work with you, what you value, what you're going to bring to that experience when you work with them. So I distinctly remember when I first started my photography business, I did free mini sessions at my apartment that I was living at the time. So I got permission to put posters everywhere, and I really just wanted one, practice, but two, images I could show in my portfolio. So I had some families come, I had some couples come, and it wasn't a whole lot of people, but it was enough for me to really start to get the practice of working with the client and to also have images that I could put in my portfolio. So this is such a twofold thing because you are, again, building relationships, you're building your brand because people are starting to interact with you and learn what you're about, and you're also getting portfolio images at the same time. So style shoots are another way that I built my portfolio, but I want to be really careful about how I explain this because I think style shoots are wonderful for practice, for getting to know other vendors, for giving them images and serving them really well. But the reality is a lot of times style shoots are set up in a way that is meant to be the most flattering for photos, but may not necessarily exist at a real wedding. So for example, for a style shoot, there is a lot more control of the environment, there is a lot more time, whereas at a wedding, you may have a ceremony in the harshest of sunlight, and you have to know how to navigate those situations. So what I'm trying to say here and to be kind of careful of is if you do a style shoot and you showcase those images, wonderful. But it's important to also know how to navigate those situations where your ceremony is outside and maybe your bride is standing in direct sunlight. Do you know how to navigate that? And if not, how can you start to practice and learn about lighting, about direct light, about different lighting situations so that you can adapt and make sure that if you are faced with that situation on a wedding day, you can still thrive in that situation. So when it comes to style shoots, again, wonderful. This was such a great way that I did build my portfolio and met a lot of vendors, started building relationships. But I wanted to make sure that one, I wasn't training myself to only be a good photographer in those perfect lighting situations. And two, that even though I was showcasing those images, I was also confident that I could shoot in situations that were not ideal. Because as wedding photographers, as event photographers, you're not always going to have ideal situations for shooting. A lot of times we actually don't. Last year, I had 9 weddings rain. We had downpours at ceremonies. I actually photographed a ceremony in a tornado warning. Like this is just real life of being a wedding photographer. So all that to say, style shoots are wonderful, but just make sure that you're also learning how to photograph in situations that are not necessarily ideal. Okay, the fourth thing you're absolutely going to need to do starting a photography business in 2024 is to outline a business plan. So again, all of these things that I'm talking about are happening kind of at the same time. They're not necessarily happening in isolation of each other. You definitely want to know how to use a camera first. You definitely want to be comfortable with your photography skills. You want to know the technical side. So yes, that absolutely comes first. But all of the other things I'm talking about, so building your portfolio and having a business plan, these are things you're going to want to be working on around the same time. You don't necessarily have to have everything outlined, but for example, with a business plan, when you're starting to outline who your target market is, who your ideal client is, when you're building your portfolio, you're going to need that information to make sure that you're not wasting time building a portfolio that isn't going to bring the right people in. So again, when I say that you're doing this at the same time, I do not mean you are overloading yourself and giving yourself too much to do, but I do mean that you're going to want to have an idea of who your client is, how you can serve them, how you can market to them, and that's part of the business plan. But you're going to need that to build your portfolio and build content that's going to serve that person as well. So all of these things really do play together hand in hand. So let's talk about building a business plan. So in your business plan, you need to, one, outline your business goals. Is one of your business goals to go full time? Is your business goal to bring in a certain amount of revenue a year? Is it to be supplementary income to your family? Is it to solely serve weddings? What are some of your business goals? Start to outline those. The next thing you need to do is put a projected time frame around those goals. So for example, when I was at my corporate job, my business goal at the time was to grow my business to the point where I could go full time. So I gave myself 2 to 3 years to do that. Granted, we were also in the middle of a pandemic, so that did throw a couple of bumps into things, but I was able to go full time in exactly 3 years, which was such a blessing and something I'm so grateful for. So start to outline your business goals. And these can change and fluctuate as your business evolves, as you grow as a person. That's completely fine. But definitely start there with your business plan. You're also going to want to start outlining who your ideal client is, your target client market, and start to think about what you have to serve that person, what you can offer them, and how you can continue to sharpen your skills to learn more so that you can really serve that person well and market to them really effectively. Because you can't really market to someone if you don't really know who they are. And throwing out a broad marketing plan that isn't targeting the type of person you want to work with is just going to overwhelm you and make you feel like you're just kind of spinning your wheels. You also need to think about your pricing structure, the financial future of your business, and what marketing strategies you want to utilize in your business. I would start thinking about some marketing platforms, start with one, and then in about 6 to 8 months, try to incorporate another one so that way you're not only showing up on one platform, but you're starting to diversify and you're starting to reach people on different platforms and start to diversify your marketing a little bit. So that's a really, really basic outline of the business plan, but that's where I would start. Just start focusing on those things, write them down, revisit them, and make any adjustments that you need to. Okay, and then finally, you need to come up with a marketing strategy. So in your business plan, you should have outlined who your target client is, your ideal client audience, how you want to reach them, where you want to reach them, and how you can market to them effectively. So you should be building your portfolio at this point, so starting to build material that you can use to market with. But once you have really outlined who your target audience is, now you can start developing a marketing strategy to really reach that person where they are. So for example, I don't market on Facebook. I haven't marketed on Facebook very much. I didn't feel like my target audience was really hanging out on Facebook. Not to say that Facebook hasn't worked wonderfully for some of my peers, some of my friends in the industry. Paid ads have worked for them, that's wonderful. But that's just not something that I personally wanted to spend my time with when it came to marketing. So I focused on my website, my blog, and Instagram, and really focused my efforts there in the beginning and then moved to other platforms like YouTube. So once you start to think about that and start to create a framework of how you want to market your services, you can start to see where you're going to need to spend your time, where you're going to need to invest, So, for example, building a website, hiring a graphic designer to do your branding. When I first started, I actually just hired a graphic design college student and she created a branding suite for me. It was very inexpensive and it was good practice for her. And as I grew my business, then I did invest in a professional brand design. But that's just an example of what you might want to be thinking of and how you can start to create a plan around that. So if part of your marketing strategy is going to be Instagram, start to create a content plan, start to create a schedule that's consistent and sustainable for you so you can actually start to share your portfolio images, you can share about who you are, your services, and start to bring in those clients that you can't wait to work with. So some things I didn't cover in this video as far as starting a business were website design, filing for an LLC, starting a bank account, and different financial systems you might want to think about implementing, such as Profit First. So I will get into those in another video, but these are the very first 5 steps if you just want to start a photography business in 2024 and you're not really sure where to start. These are the first 5 things I would start with, but also start doing some research around filing for an LLC, different bank accounts you might want to start separating your finances into. And once you have these first 5 things taken care of, you can start to really zone in on some of those other things. And as you start booking clients, starting to think about just more of the financial piece of it. But this is just to get you off the ground and to help you start to create a vision for where you're going and a roadmap of how you're going to get there. So if you like this video, I'd love to hear from you, and if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate. You can always leave a comment and I will absolutely get back to you.